All right, we're gonna pick up from where we left off on Moorish Paradigm. So in this issue's Moorish history segment, we look at a wide array of bits and pieces of Moorish history that we strive to gradually weave into a coherent whole. This is a very hard undertaking, an undertaking where we are bound to make some mistakes due to the degree to which history has been hidden, suppressed, destroyed, and distorted. I ask that in any area where we may make a mistake to please write me and bring it to my attention. I do not claim that my historical research is infallible. I will make public any mistakes that I realize or that has been brought to my attention. That being said, here is some information I found in my researches or was sent to me by our information network that is truly international in scope. Scroll down. The Fez. Notice the crown on Noble Jew Ali's head on the next page. It is called a fez. The fez is the national headdress of the Moors and represents the heights of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Whenever you see the fez worn, it shows that the person wearing it is either a Moor or that they are a student or someone knowledgeable in Moorish science, history, and civilization. This is a picture of Deuce Muhammad Ali. He was a Moor and had a very strong influence on Marcus Garvey. Noble Jew Ali referred to Marcus Garvey as a sort of John the Baptist who came before him in order to prepare the way. Marcus Garvey traveled extensively throughout the dominions of Amexem, the Americas and the Caribbean, and Africa. Here, you will see a picture of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad with the fez on, clearly showing the influence which Noble Jew Ali and the Moors had on him. As a matter of fact, in the Supreme Wisdom, Volume 2, page 84, the Honorable Muhammad says, quote, I have always had a very high opinion of both the late Noble Jew Ali and Marcus Garvey, and admired their courage in helping our people and appreciated their work. Both of these men were fine Muslims. The followers of Noble Jew Ali and Marcus Garvey should now follow me and cooperate with us and in our work because we are only trying to finish up with those before us had started, unquote. Thus, it is seen that Elijah Muhammad, in his own words, felt that he was only carrying on what Marcus Garvey and Noble Jew Ali had started before him. This is a picture of C.M. Bey to the left, wearing the fez, national headdress of the Moors. C.M. Bey was a student of Noble Jew Ali and Masonic science. Below his picture, it says that he is a 33rd, and 360-degree Master Mason. It was C.M. Bey who openly revealed the fact that Moorish science originally was not a religion in the present sense of the word, but was in fact natural science and a way of life based on mathematics scaling from 0 to 9, the science of the zodiac, and geometry. He built upon a foundation laid by Noble Jew Ali and wrote Clock of Destiny, Book 1 and 2, and Circle of Life. He also filed the what he called the Zodiac Constitution, federal government between 1947 through 1951. The fez is a symbol of wisdom and power that goes hundreds of years into the past. In this picture, you have a group of bronze Phoenicians, ancient Moorish navigators. They are all wearing the conical national headdress of the Moors called the fez, and also known as the Hemin. Mm, that's heavy. Ancient. So this picture right here, here are two more Phoenician statues showing Phoenicians wearing the fez or hemmen. This picture, here is a picture of the ancient Moor known as the Assyrian or the Cushites wearing the fez. Ancient. Cushites wearing fezes, Phoenicians wearing fezes, same people, but they're called something different, different time period, or from another person's perspective, Greek, etc. Be called a different name. Here are statues of the ancient Moors called Hittites, Canaanites, and the inhabitants of Cyprus. Notice that they are all wearing the fez. Noble Ali said the ancient Canaanites, Moabites, Hammatites, Cushites, Hittites, etc., were all ancestors of the inhabitants of North and West Africa, including the Americas, dominions of Amexem. Ancient. This picture from India is of the Hindu god Vishnu, reclining and brooding over the face of the deep. He represents the preserver or sustainer of creation. Notice that he is wearing the fez. Ancient. This is a picture of Marminez, the first king of United. The so-called white crown of Upper Egypt, again, is the fez. On this stela is the bull motif representing the age of Taurus, from 4,593 to 2,432 BC. This was the age in which male rule and the institution of divine kingship was established by the ancient Moors. Prior to this was the matriarchal period. Now this picture right here, this mural shows the ancient Moors called the Elamitites. Notice that they also wear a fez, the same as that of the white crown of Upper Egypt. Mm, like a turban and a fez on that. Like a turban and a fez right there. Ancient. It was said by some of the Moorish elders that the fez was originally white, according to the book Ahasp. The fez became red when an ancient master refused to reveal the secret of his psychic abilities. He was thrown into the lion's den, and his blood dyed the white fez red. Damn. Thus, the fez also came to symbolize one who was faithful even unto death. This is also symbolized by Haram Abif in the Masonic ritual. Now, this picture right here is of the Toltec king wearing a white fez, inherited by the Toltecs from the earlier Olmecs. Mm, mm, this heavy right here. This picture somewhat shocked me. It was Hitler's Nazis wearing the fez. Hitler studied under Moorish science. He also was well aware of the fez and its significance. Mm, look at this guy. This is J. Edgar Hoover, head of FBI for decades. He is seen here wearing the fez. On his fez is a crescent moon and star with a scimitar sword above it. According to C.M. Bay, the crescent moon and star represent the Moorish woman and child, and the sword above it represents persecution of the mother and child. The crescent represents the mother or widow of masonry, or the widow in masonry, as well as the institutions teaching Islam amongst our people in this hemisphere. The star represents the child, so-called new Moors, those being born into Moorish science. In the book of Revelations, 12:1 through 5, it says, quote, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns on his head. And his tail grew, or his tail drew, the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it were born." Unquote. J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI represent the dragon spoken of in the COINTELPRO program of the 60s, whose official stated purpose was to stop the rise of a Black Messiah. COINTELPRO represents that which was a devour her Black child, or Black Messiah. Let me run that back. COINTELPRO represents that which was to devour her child, Black Messiah, as soon as it was born. Unquote. This so-called Black Messiah is the child the woman was traveling to give birth to. But despite the dragon's attempt to devour the child, the next verse in the book of Revelation says, "And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up into God and to his throne." Thus, the child, the new Moors, were born during the 60s and survived despite the attempts of J. Edgar Hoover's COINTELPRO, the Great Red Dragon. The next series verses describes a war in heaven between Michael, Michael, and his angels, and the dragon and his angels. Heaven is a state of mind. Thus, the war in heaven is actually referring to a war for the minds of our people. It is a war of the paradigms. The new Moors paradigm is now slaying the dragon and his paradigm. And his paradigm is being cast out of heaven from the minds of our people. That's heavy. So this is a relief from Mesopotamia showing Oannes, the fishman. He was said to have brought the knowledge of civilization to that region. It was said that he come out of the sea to teach men by day, and then he will return to the sea by night. Some have speculated that these were highly advanced seafaring Moors coming from some unknown location via ship or submarine and educating the local population there in the arts and sciences of civilization. These people eventually traveled west from Mesopotamia to Canaan and became known as the Phoenicians. Later, they traveled further west into West Africa, where the Dogon tribe still preserves the memory of the Oannes and refer him a Sonomo. Notice Oannes is carrying a little bag, which was said to contain his gifts to man. Right here, so this little area. That's interesting. So here is an Olmec relief from this hemisphere showing someone in some sort of vessel carrying the exact same little bag as carried by the Oannes on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. This once more shows definite connections between both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. That's heavy. That's heavy right there. The plane had to pass on that one. Here is a picture from Chichen Itza, Mexico, showing colossal statues. If you look closely at what is in their hands, you will notice that they're once again carrying the same little bag. The civilizations all around the earth was founded by ancient Moorish navigation or navigationers. Also notice that feathered crown they are wearing is in the same as that worn by the Persian noble in the picture on the right. Interesting. So it's the same civilization all through the planet. These facts show a definite connection between the so-called Old and New World long before Columbus. It also shows that the oceans were not a barrier to travel for the ancient Moors, but was in fact that which facilitated travel for the seafaring ancient Moorish navigators who also settled the various islands in the Pacific Ocean also. Mm. Below, this is a picture of Mayan nobles. Notice the loincloth called alamazar, extending from their waist and then down between their legs. In the book African Presence in Early America, Harold G. Lawrence quotes on page 201, quote, Columbus was startled to find that the Antillean Indians bartered a woven cloth, identical in style, design, and purpose to those he had seen in West Africa. The admiral made several notices of this woven cotton and referred to it as alamazar, a cloth the Moors imported from West Africa into Morocco, Spain, and Portugal. The Indians seemingly wore their alamazars in the same manner as the Africans. Ferdinand Columbus describes the Indian cotton garments as breechcloths of the same design and cloth as the shawls worn by the Moorish women of Granada. Cortez said the men wear breech clothes about their bodies and large mantles, very thin, and painted in the style of Moorish draperies. That's probably where they get drip from, Moorish drip. Shit crazy, man. Notice the print design and notice the mantles around their upper bodies. Here is an almazar breechcloth worn in West Africa. Below, in this picture, notice the almazars, mantles, and the turbans worn by these Mayan nobles. This is more proof of the ancient Moorish civilization in this hemisphere and its connection to North and West Africa, all of which is the ancient dominions of the Atlantis or Amexem. Mexico is synonymous with Amexem. On the right, this is a picture from India showing that the Kushites also wore almazars and turbans. Hmm. This shows the extent of the worldwide civilization established by the ancient Moors. According to the legends of the Jews by Ralph Ginsburg, Nimrod, the son of Cush, son of Ham, was responsible for the setting up of the first world order after the flood. After the flood, we were the masters of the seven seas. One of the great dynasties of India was called the Maurya dynasty. More equals more, dating from 321 BC. Once you grasp this Moorish paradigm, almost everywhere you look, you will neither find traces of the ancient Moorish civilization or its influences. Even the Muslims in the Philippines are known as Moors to this day. Below, Moorish influence can even be seen amongst the Ku Klux Klan. I present to you the Ku Klux Klan manual. It is known as their Quran, after the Moorish Quran. In fact, one of the officers is even called Caliph, after the Moorish term for successor or ruler, Caliph. The Ku Klux Klan spearheaded the battle against the Moors and Moorish civilization after the Union of 1854 through 1865. Their use of these terms show the degree of their familiarity with the Moors and Moorish civilization. If they were not fighting the Moors here in this hemisphere, how would you account for them knowing Moorish terminology? They did not travel to Africa. They learned this terminology from Moors right here. One day while researching, I found an old book called Records of Court of Assistance of the Colony of the Massachusetts Bay, 1620 through 1692. I found two interesting references to Moors. One reference on page 118 says, and quote, Minkeri, the blackamoor, was abolished and dismissed, unquote. Notice that the adjective black is put in front of the Moor. The other reference on page 76 says, quote, George Pye, a Moor, was to remain with Mr. Craddock until advice from England, advice to be sent by Rye, unquote. These two references show that legally they had to deal with Moors in a special way. Why did they simply abolish or admonish and dismiss Moors who did wrong, or have to send to England for advice before proceeding? Initially, I could not see why, since the Moroccan Treaty of 1787 could not apply, since these references are for situations which occurred between 1630 and 1692. Then I realized that since the colonies and plantations were still under the charter with England, that there must have been treaties between England and the Moors prior to the Moroccan Treaty of 1787. Sure enough, in another book, I found that same day called Index of British Treaties, 1101 through 1968. Damn. I found that dating back as far as 1666, there were numerous treaties between England and the Moors. Between 1666 and 1762, I counted 26 treaties between England and Morocco, Algiers, Tripoli, and Tunis. Below is an example. Let that sink in. Let that sink in for a minute. 1660 treaties. That was before the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which was 1786. So all these treaties, it was nothing called the United States yet. Morocco and England, Morocco and the Netherlands, Morocco and the British, etc. Right. So these treaties between England and the Moors are the reasons why in the Black Codes of Virginia, as early as 1705, it specifically says that Moors and Turks in amity are exempted from slavery. And amity means the exist of a treaty of peace and friendship between two nations. So what we just read is this part right here. Christians in their native country accept Turks and Moors in amity. You know what I mean? So that's the distinguishing. But that's language in the treaty. showing that we're not U.S. citizens, we're not black. Ain't no black, Negro, color, none of that language and no treaty. No Latino, Hispanic, no language and no international treaties. Those are all modern terminologies. Notice in the treaty mentioned above between England and Algiers, it states, Treaty of Peace with the Bassa and Divan of Algiers. Budget Meakin in the book The Moorish Empire says on pages 165 through 166 that the Divan or Diwan or Council of the Blacks have become the actual center of power. And on page 166, he refers to the Divan or Diwan as the all-powerful Diwan of the Blacks. This Divan or Diwan was a highly trained standing army numbering into the hundreds of thousands. It was this Divan that put sultans in power and took them down according to their will. The slaveholders in this country had to destroy all knowledge of Moorish civilization and nationality in order to enslave you and I. As Moors, they could not enslave you due to the treaty signed between England and the various Moorish republics, and later between the newly founded United States and Morocco. Thus, they had to get us out of our proper name and nationality in order to enslave us. This was the motivation behind the slave brainwashing. This problem was not the miseducation of the Negro, but was the miseducation of the Moor to make him believe he is a Negro, descendant of West African slaves and brought here on slave ships. Based on our present situation, I would say that the Europeans were very successful. They falsified and forged documents in order to classify you as Negro brought from Africa instead of Moorish prisoner of war. If they did not reclassify us thus, they would have been in violation of all those treaties, especially if they enslaved Moorish nationals. The reason I show all these proofs that we were the parties to these treaties is because according to the Constitution, treaties are the law of the land. In fact, treaties are even somewhat more powerful than the Constitution, because even if the Constitution is suspended under martial law, the treaties in force are not suspended. Martial law suspends the country's domestic obligations, but does not suspend international obligations. At this point, I would like to thank you for joining us in this third issue of the Journal of Moorish Paradigm. In the next issue, we will have information that you definitely will not want to miss. Oh, one last thing on a lighter note. Nothing new under the sun. It was the Moors of Melanesia who invented bungee jumping. This is a picture of the Melanesian young man jumping off a man-made wooden tower over 100 feet high. This was part of a manhood initiation ritual. Notice the bungee cords tied to his ankles. Truly, there is nothing new under the sun. Huh, interesting. Couple books for all y'all studious human beings out there. You know what I mean? Get y'all cross-reference on. You know what I mean? Don't believe nobody. Know for yourself. Crates of information in the world if you just know what to look for. Stop, you know what I mean? Stop worrying about stuff that don't matter, man. This is why they killing us, not knowing this information. Period, point blank. We trying to uplift the veil. Just like a quarterback. Yeah, man. I just want to make sure ain't nothing else juicy up in here. Okay. Look like we good. So I'm gonna pick it back up. When we get back on, we're gonna do book 4. But peace and love to all the Moors out there. Hopefully this was fruitful. And Islam, happy holy day.